The sky didn't darken. It shattered. It happened at 3:19 p.m. East African time on an ordinary Tuesday. Children in Nairobi were just getting out of school. Street vendors called out their prices for chapati and roasted maize. Somewhere in the Nairobi CBD, a banker was texting his mistress while waiting for an elevator. Normal things. Human things. Then the clouds split like overripe fruit, and something immense fell through. It was not a ship in the way ships are understood. It was a continent. A structure the size of a small country, floating on impossible engines that sang at a frequency too low for human hearing, too low for sound, but not too low for fare. Pigeons exploded midday from the pressure. Windows rippled like fabric. Above the earth, hanging like a new and unwelcome moon, the alien craft unfolded its arms, enormous black pylons shaped like scythes, like wings, like judgment. They had come. The first to see the face of the enemy was a street vendor named Kamau. He dropped his crate of oranges when the projection appeared in the sky above him, blocking the sun. It was a face. Tall, silver-skinned, lips sharp and colorless, eyes entirely black. It did not blink. It did not smile. "We are the Velatari," it said, in a voice that seemed to skip the ears and burrow directly into the chest. "We are not your enemies. We are your correction." Across the world, the transmission repeated itself. In London, neon billboards flickered and transformed into the same face. In Tokyo, the alien voice spoke through car stereos and subway loudspeakers. In New York, the broadcast hijacked skyscraper window glass and turned it into black mirrors that stared back. Your world is broken, fragmented, diseased by choice and chaos. You call your leaders presidents, generals, kings, yet none of them lead you. You have no weapons that frighten us, no strategies that surprise us. Your systems are glass, and we are fire. You have no power. It was not a declaration of war. That would have required respect. It was a verdict. Then came the silence. The Velatari disabled 71% of Earth's satellites in under 4 minutes. The rest fell out of orbit like divine tears. Militaries tried to respond, but commands were lost in transit. Submarines sank without explanation. Aircraft froze in midday, turned off like lights. In Moscow, the Kremlin went dark. In Washington, D.C., NORAD blinked out. In Delhi, the Prime Minister's residence was reduced to a crater. No sound, no flash, just absence. And then, quiet. Not peace, just a silence, a wide, dreadful stillness across the surface of the earth, as though the planet itself was holding its breath. And yet, in the middle of nowhere, where no camera pointed, no satellite looked, and no Velatari drone hovered, a light blinked. Once, twice, then held steady. A signal. It came from a hill in rural Minnesota. A patch of nowhere covered in weeds, cows, and rust. A place forgotten by maps and remembered only by ghosts. The signal was short. A ping, precisely 112 kilohertz. Not a human emergency frequency. Not a distress call. It was a summons, and someone answered it. The alien leaders convened within their orbital throne, far above Earth's atmosphere, irritated by the anomaly. To them, Earth was a hollowed husk, a solved problem, a finished puzzle. The human race had curled into fear like worms under stone. But this ping, this pulse, it repeated, again and again, a language they did not recognize. Old, crude, almost analog. One of the Velatari scientists, a creature named Zeltris, ran the waveform through analysis and blinked the first time in 17 years. "This isn't coming from any known server grid," he said. Voice line was static. "It's not on their net." "Then how?" growled Vrosh Ixon, supreme judicator of the Purification Legion. Zeltris hesitated. "It's coming from a tower," he said. "A communications relay from the early 21st century. A ham radio." The room filled with murmurs. Velatari spoke not with voices but pulses, with flashes of thought. But even they, ancient and cold, knew the sound of an error in calculation. They dispatched a Hunter-class scout vessel immediately. Back on Earth, the shack stood beneath a pale sky, its roof rusted, its walls warped by years of snow and sun and silence. The tower beside it leaned slightly, like a tired sentinel. It had been built before most of Earth's population had been born, before smart walls, before solar fiber, before the collapse. Inside the shack sat an old man in a creaking chair, chewing on sunflower seeds and staring at a wall full of dials, knobs, and flickering green lights. His name was Walter Grimm. Once, he'd been known as Ray 7. Back when wars were fought in jungles with knives and microwave rifles. Back when America still had black budgets buried under blacker secrets. Back when he mattered. Now, he looked like a scarecrow wearing denim. Wrinkled, sun-leathered, eyes like gun barrels, cold and hollow. But beneath the liver spots and the knotted fingers, there still ticked a brain that had memo eyes for 1,000 kill codes. He knew they'd come. The moment the sky split open over Nairobi, he'd gone to the basement, dusted off his tower, and powered it with an old Tesla battery repurposed for doomsday. His finger hovered over a switch labeled X and 9 Initiate, Twink Protocol. He hadn't pressed it. Not yet. First, he needed them to notice. The Velatari vessel arrived just after sundown. A shape like a crescent blade, smooth as bone, fell from the stars and hovered 30 feet above the shack. Trees bent. Cows fled. Somewhere, a fox dropped dead from sheer fright. From its underbelly, a projection unfurled like black lightning. 10 feet tall. Silver-skinned. The same face that had spoken from every sky earlier now loomed above Walter's outhouse. Vroshikson, you are the source of the interference, he said without emotion. Walter didn't move. He spit a sunflower seed shell onto the floor. You boys always announce yourselves like royalty, he said, voice slow and gravel-thick. I miss the days when killers came quiet. Vrosh tilted his head, not in confusion. In study. You are not afraid. Walter laughed. A dry, painful thing, like rust breaking loose. Son, I was trained to be scary before you even left your gas planet. Vrosh's nostrils flared, a rare show of irritation. We have ended your governments, disarmed your species. You possess nothing we fear. Walter stood up, joints creaking like old wood. He walked to a panel and flipped it open, revealing a bank of red switches, each labeled with numbers and glyphs in multiple languages, English, Russian, Mandarin, and one language not from Earth. He looked Rush square in his endless black eyes. You thought Earth had no power, Walter said, voice rising from the depths of a long-buried wrath. That's 'cause you forgot who built the fire. He flipped the first switch. From deep underground, the world answered, and everything began to wake up. Walter Grimm watched the switch drop into place with a finality that felt like scripture. No alarms, no glowing lights, just a faint click swallowed by the silence of the shack, and then, from somewhere far below, a hum, a vibration in the soil, a waking. It started beneath his feet. 12 miles down, deep in bedrock abandoned by science and condemned by conscience, Vault X and 9 stowed. Buried during the collapse of the Global Defense Accord, the vault had been sealed with biometric keys only 3 men in history had possessed. Walter was the last of them, and his heartbeat was still on file. In the alien scout vessel hovering above, Vroshiksen's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a flicker in his obsidian eyes. His neural uplink twitched with a spike of confusion, the equivalent of a scream in Velatari terms. "What have you done?" he demanded. Walter didn't answer. He walked slowly to the wall of dusty panels, each inscribed with codes from a time when the Earth still dared to dream about interstellar war and how to win it. His hand slid over the panel labeled E7, Twink Operative Awakening. Beside it, a cracked photograph was taped to the wall. 6 figures, all young, all beautiful, all deadly. They stood shirtless and blood-smeared in front of a burning jungle, grinning like devils. They were the Twinks. They were his sons. Not by blood, but by battle. Engineered, trained, broken, rebuilt. The result of a secret project born in Cold War bunkers and perfected in cybernetic black labs. Soldiers who didn't age. Soldiers who didn't hesitate. Soldiers the world had buried too deep to find again. Until now, Walter whispered the activation phrase, one he hadn't spoken aloud in 40 years. Wake the pretty ones. It's time to dance. Half a world away, the Arctic cracked. In an abandoned Norwegian outpost beneath the permafrost, a cryo vault hissed open with a roar that hadn't echoed in decades. A single red light began blinking, first slow, Then faster. Inside, pods hissed and steamed. Pneumatic clamps released. Cooling system screamed and failed. 6 capsules. 6 bodies. The first to move was Rook, Unit 03. Biometric enhanced, carbon bone reinforced, and known for a kill record that once emptied a stadium. His eyes opened slowly, revealing bright amethyst irises. He sat up, flexed, and exhaled like a man remembering who he used to be. He grinned. Daddy's calling. The others woke in a cascade of grace and brutality. They said nothing to each other. They didn't have to. Twinks didn't need orders. They felt war coming like wolves scenting blood. They dressed in gear sealed inside the pods, suits woven with antigravitic threading, edged with monomolecular blades. No guns. They were the weapons. Their mission was already coded into their spinal chips. Objective: eliminate all non-human presence. Reclaim planet. Smile while doing it. Back in Minnesota, Walter could feel the earth shifting beneath him, like something enormous and ancient rolling over in its grave. The projection of Vroshix crackled with rage now, no longer calm, no longer certain. You are a relic, a decaying mind clinging to ghosts. We scoured your internet. We mapped your weapons. Your species is nothing. Walter stepped out into the moonlight, boots crunching on frostbitten grass, and looked up at the floating blade of alien arrogance above him. He squinted, spat another sunflower seed, and then smiled. That smile. The one that didn't reach the eyes. The one you only ever saw once if you were lucky. You boys made one mistake, he said quietly. You thought we needed your respect to kill you. Then the horizon exploded. The first strike came in Shanghai. 3 twinks fell from orbit like silver meteors. Civilian scanners registered nothing until the atmosphere screamed. Then, impact. Not loud, not showy. Just 3 thunks, deliberate, precise, surgical. They moved before the dust settled. Rook sliced through a squadron of Velatari guards before they could process the movement. His blade shimmered. Heads rolled in silence. One alien tried to flee. Rook was already behind him. He whispered peekaboo and drove his knife into the base of its skull, twisting until the light behind its eyes died. In Istanbul, the Shiv sisters, twins coded as Unit 06 and 07, hacked into the core of a Velatari mothership midair, using nothing but gravity hooks and attitude thrusters stolen from a scrapped NASA prototype. They boarded through the hull. They didn't knock. Inside, screams were brief. One sister danced through a hallway, carving flesh and bone like she was born to music only she could hear. The other whispered lullabies as she melted alien bone with handheld plasma kisses. They were elegant. They were terrifying. They were having fun. In Sao Paulo, a Velatari control beacon erupted in blue flame, reduced to slag by a twink who only answered to the name Milo. He smiled as he walked through the ash, bare-chested and radiant, his skin smoking but unmarred. He looked up at the sky and blew it a kiss. "Come down here," he said. "I miss your screams." Vrosh watched these feeds in silence. He stood inside the command chamber of his main vessel, now parked in geosynchronous orbit. 100 holoscreens flickered around him, displaying death in elegant loops, Velatari officers torn apart, engines ruptured, ships falling. They hadn't accounted for this. Humans, yes. Guns, yes. Nukes, of course. But these beings moved too fast, thought too cruelly, fought with the joy of artists and the precision of predators. They looked human but weren't. Not anymore. What are they? Vrosh asked aloud. Zeltris stepped forward slowly, reading the data stream. There's no mention of them in any formal registry, but we found a phrase, buried in a U.S. black site from 2084. Speak. Twinks. Biochemical Class 9 operatives, created for infiltration, sabotage, and annihilation. Each one trained to kill 3,000 ways and smiled during every single one. Vrosh stared at the center screen, where Rook had just executed a mid-A triple flip off a Velatari drone before driving his boot through its skull. Why did they smile? They were trained to. Back on Earth, Walter sat alone in his shack again, watching the feeds on his analog monitors. Each screen showed chaos, smoke, and beauty. He watched Milo leap from a crumbling building onto a fleeing skimmer. Watched Shiv 6 spin through a waterfall of alien blood. He whispered, "Damn, boys, you never forgot the walls." Then a new alert blinked. His eyes narrowed. A red pulse. Incoming transmission. From deep within the Earth's crust. No signature. No origin. Just coordinates. And a phrase burned into the analog signal path. Command received. Phase 2 approved. Lock Armageddon. Walter's hands trembled. Not from fear. From memory. He looked again at the panel. Below the switch he flipped, one remained untouched. It was behind a small glass cover, long forgotten, marked in dust and faded letters. Omega, all must burn. He stared at it for a long, long time. Then, softly, he said, "Not yet. Let the boys play a little longer." And far above, Vroshikson turned from the flickering screens and whispered something to himself in his native tongue. Translated, it meant, "We have awakened the devil's choir." There is a moment in war, not when the first bullet flies, nor when the first scream echoes, but when the enemy realizes they have underestimated their prey. That moment had arrived, and for the Velatari, it arrived too late. They had Cold Earth Week. They had claimed humans had no power. And now, they were running. The Twinks were awake. All six, blood-marked, beautifully lethal, and spread across the globe like fire through oil. Each one a ghost from Earth's lost military experiments. Each one trained not just to kill, but to perform it. And performance was underway. In the rain-drenched ruins of Berlin, Rook crouched on top of a cracked statue, shirtless under lightning. Velatari drones buzzed below like angry wasps. He didn't wait. He leapt. 3 seconds later, steel met skull. Flesh flew like wet paper. Rook rolled midair, landed, and flicked the blood from his twin knives. He exhaled slowly. "Let's make this pretty." Half a world away, the Shiv sisters descended into Jakarta through sheets of burning sky. Their cryopods had dropped like comets. When they landed, they emerged without hesitation. Identical smiles. Identical blades. They said nothing. They moved as mirrors, cutting down Velatari shock troops with surgical cruelty. One twirled through the air, slicing 2 necks in a pirouette. The other whispered lullabies in broken English while plunging her blade between an alien's ribs. They laughed in sync. It wasn't joy. It was ritual. In what remained of Sydney, Milo faced a towering Velatari enforcer, 10 feet tall and snarling. Milo, of course, was shirtless too, his skin kissed with plasma burns and ash. The alien swung. Milo ducked, rolled, leapt onto its back, and whispered into its 3 ears, "Try harder." Then he drove a fusion spike through its neck and rode the body down like a surfboard through flame. He struck a pose at the bottom. Click! He took a selfie over its corpse. For the fans. Back in Minnesota, Walter Grimm watched the feed from his shack. Static crackled across analog monitors. One showed Rook's massacre. Another tracked the Shiv sisters. A third flickered with Milo's smiling face. Walter didn't smile. He just leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and muttered, "You ain't seen hell yet." Then came the knock. Not on the door. On the sky. The shack trembled as the Velatari's elite arrived. Cloaked war forms, humanoid in shape but twisted with obsidian armor and burning green veins. The Slayers, 20 of them, engineered for extermination, programmed to erase anything ancient. One stepped forward and projected a voice like static wrapped in silk. "You're the operator. Walter Grimm. Used to be. You activated the Twinks. That was unwise." Walter rose, slow but steady. "Boys like me don't do wise. We do necessary." The Slayers raised their weapons. Then, the tree line exploded. Rook was first. He tore through the closest Slayer with a shriek of metal and fury, blades slicing in X patterns designed for maximum arterial trauma. Its body hit the ground in pieces. The Shiv sisters came next, vaulting from nowhere, dismembering 2 Slayers before they even drew breath. One sister twisted her kill into an abstract sculpture. The other licked a drop of green blood from her blade and whispered, "Minty." Milo landed behind Walter, winked, and whispered, "We brought the dance floor." And then the real fight began. The battle wasn't just vicious. It was aesthetic carnage. Milo slid between blasts like a figure skate on glass, planting explosive charges as he spun. Rook used the Slayer's severed limb as a club, laughing as he fought two more. The Shiv sisters, Grace incarnate, battled back-to-back, perfectly synchronized like a ballet choreographed in blood. Walter didn't move. He didn't need to. His boys were doing just fine. In 7 minutes, the shack stood quiet again. 20 Slayers lay dead, their black blood hissing in the snow. Milo brushed a spot off his chest. All clear. Dad. Above Earth, panic had taken root. Vrosh Ixon, once composed, once curious, was now furious. His command chamber was chaos. Alarms, dead channels, failing captains. He stared at the images on screen, his soldiers dying not in war, but in spectacle. These creatures are not human. No, sir, Zeltris replied. They are twinks. They are demons, clowns, sadists, weapons. And they are winning. Vrosh snarled. Initiate the reversal pulse. Zeltris paled. But now. The reversal pulse was a last resort Velatari device, psychic, not physical. It swept across Earth in seconds, an invisible wave meant to confuse memory, unravel programming, dull instincts. It hit the twinks mid-stride. Rook staggered. Milo clutched his head. The Shiv sisters fell to their knees, eyes glassy. Even Walter felt it, an ache in his skull, a fog rising behind his thoughts. Milo looked around, dazed. What? Where? For the first time since their awakening, they weren't smiling. Walter crawled into the shack, reaching with shaking fingers. He grabbed the key from around his neck and unlocked the final panel. Omega. Behind it, one last switch, the one they told him never to pull. If they forget who they are, the scientists had warned decades ago. This will remind them. Walter didn't hesitate. He flipped it. The world didn't shake. It remembered. From underground vaults to dormant satellites, something ancient roared back to life, a sub-frequency pulse coded into the twinks' bones. It hit them like fire. Milo gasped. Rook stood tall. The Shiv sisters looked at each other and grinned. They remembered who they were and what they loved most. Artful destruction. They turned toward the sky as one. And from each of their mouths came a single phrase, perfectly synced, perfectly human. Time to make the gods bleed. In the cold of space, where light bends and time forgets itself, the Velatari did what no invader should ever do. They panicked. Their elite slayers were dead. Their mind-breaking reversal pulse had failed. And now, Earth's monsters were awake. But Vrosh Ixon, High Commander of the 4th Velatari Invasion Fleet, had prepared for this day, though he had never believed it would come. He stood at the center of the divine crucible, a biomechanical altar deep within the flagship. Its walls throbbed with organic circuitry, pulsing like a hot car from a dying god. The crucible wasn't a weapon. It was a summoning. Unlock Project LUX Ray, Vrosh commanded. So, that weapon is only for... Do it. The command input was biological. Vrosh bit into his own palm and smeared his blood across the controls. The ship groaned. Something ancient stirred beneath its surface. On 8th, the twinks were on the move again. Rook moved through the shattered ruins of Nairobi with terrifying calm. Milo ran alongside a downed monorail in Rio, dragging an alien corpse behind him like a cape. The Shiv sisters danced atop the spires of Istanbul, blades glinting like twin moons. They were no longer confused. The Omega Protocol had burned the fog from their minds. They remembered everything, the training, the trauma, the reason they were made. And above all, they remembered the lie Earth had told the stars. We are weak. That lie had become prophecy. Until now, inside the Minnesota shack, Walter Grimm stood in silence, watching the northern sky pulse unnaturally. A single beam of violet light was falling from the heavens, slow, deliberate, beautiful in its terror. He reached for the old military transmitter, its signal buried under 20 encryption walls, and flipped it on. This is Operator Grimm, confirming activation of Lux Foray by hostile forces. We are looking at Divine Class incursion. Repeating, the Velatari are unleashing a god. A long pause, then a voice, cold and clear. Then it's time. Time for what? Walter asked. The voice answered with a whisper. The seed. The beam from orbit struck Earth not with sound, but with silence. A flash. A stillness. Then came the tremor. A being began to descend, neither entirely physical nor entirely light. Its wings spanned miles. Its body was a cathedral of radiant pain. Velatari scripture called it Luxferre, the first flame that spoke. To humans, it looked like a burning angel. Haloed, screaming, faceless. It hovered over northern Canada. Forests died under its gaze. Skies warped. Gravity snarled. The twinks felt it instantly. Milo dropped to one knee. Rook coughed blood. Even the Shiv sisters trembled, blades dimming slightly. Because this wasn't a soldier. This was judgment. On the Crucible Bridge, Vrosh raised his arms and declared, Behold, the proof of our power. Earth shall kneel. But Earth did not kneel. It responded. Deep beneath the crust of Patagonia, a tremor woke. Buried below tectonic plates, under ice and time, something began to hum, a frequency known to no satellite, no scanner, no Velatari mind. Walter Grimm heard it first. He pressed his hand to the ground. It's calling, he whispered. The seed. Back in his shack, he tore open the final drawer. Inside, a sealed vial, bone white, etched with red symbols. He uncorked it. The ground screamed. Across the globe, each twink felt it. Not pain, not fear, but recognition. Milo raised his head, blood drying on his cheek. His waking it. Rook smiled. It's about damn time. The Shiv sisters began to sing. Under the Andes, the seed cracked open. It wasn't a weapon. It was a being. No eyes, no limbs. Just a core of sentient iron and old code, written not in binary but in emotion. A pulse-form entity born from Earth's last breath before extinction, saved and hidden away by the old operators in case this day ever came. They had called it Eliath. The name meant nothing. Its will meant everything. Eliath surged through the crust like lightning wrapped in thought. It passed under oceans, over bones, through servers long forgotten. And as it moved, it sang, not in words, but in resonance. It reached the twinks one by one. Each fell to their knees. Each saw visions, of fire, of earth breaking, of gods kneeling. Each stood again, different, upgraded, unchained. Their pupils turned gold. Their skin shimmered with dormant code. And when they looked up at the sky, they no longer saw a god. They saw a target. Luxferre turned its gaze on New York. The city's last offenders screamed as the air ignited. Buildings collapsed in silence. Entire districts turned to salt. And then, a flash of color. Rook landed on its shoulder. He drove his twin knives into the radiant flesh, not cutting, but corrupting. The blades now hummed with Eliath's code. They infected. Luxferre recoiled. It screamed, not in sound, but in memory. Thousands of years of divinity burned away in milliseconds. Milo followed next, flying upward on a hijacked alien cruiser, launching himself into the core of Luxferre's chest like a bullet made of irony and rage. God, he shouted, meet chaos. Boom, the chest ruptured. Above Istanbul, the Shiv sisters arrived as streaks of plasma. They moved inside Luxferre, through its bones of star matter, cutting and rewriting with every step. They were no longer just assassins. They were surgeons of divine decay. What do we do now? One whispered. We dance, said the other. And they did, carving their way through the angel-like poetry with a body count. Back in orbit, Vrosh watched in horror. This cannot be. It is a god. It was a god, Zeltris whispered. They made it mortal. Then fire everything. Empty the fleet. Sir, we won't survive the feedback. I don't care. Earth lit up like a wound. Every Velatari ship unleashed its arsenal, void bombs, entropy warheads, singularity space. The sky rained apocalypse. But the twinks had already moved. They had pulled Luxferre apart from the inside. Its wings tore, its halo shattered, and as it fell, burning, screaming, unmade, Eliath rose through its corpse like a phoenix made of vengeance and voltage. The feedback hit the fleet like a tsunami of fury. One by one, the Velatari ships exploded, and from orbit, Earth looked peaceful again. Just for a moment, Walter Grimm stood outside his shack. Ash rained from the sky. He lit a cigarette with hands that didn't shake. Behind him, the Twinks landed. Rook, Milo, the Shiv sisters. Blooded, scorched, but alive. Stronger. Walter exhaled smoke and looked at the burning pieces of Lux Foray falling through the clouds. They wanted proof Earth had no power, he said. We gave it to them, Milo replied, cracking his neck. They call that a god, Rook muttered. I've seen better stage effects. The Shiv sisters simply stared at the sky, waiting. And then Walter turned, walking back into his shack. One more to go, he whispered, because somewhere, far beyond even the Velatari fleet, beyond their maps and warnings, something else had started watching. Something that remembered Eliath's name. Something that had not yet chosen a side. And it was coming. There are silences that come after victory. Some are sacred. Others are warnings. The world had stopped screaming. Lux Foray was gone, torn from the heavens by blades, bullets, and a vengeance born from the forgotten corners of Earth's blood-soaked legacy. The Velatari fleet, once godlike, unassailable, was a memory now, scattered as burning ash in the exosphere. But Walter Grimm, he hadn't moved. He stood barefoot on scorched earth, the twisted remains of his shack behind him, embers dancing in the wind like the last applause of a dying crowd. And he smiled. Well, he muttered, you woke it up. The Twinks gathered before him, wounded, beautiful, lethal. Milo leaned against a bent radio tower, cracking his knuckles. Rook sat cross-legged in the mud, cleaning alien blood from his twin knives. The Shiv sisters stood shoulder to shoulder in silence, their eyes locked to the sky, as if they were listening to something no one else could hear. There was no celebration, no cheers, no we did it. Because they all felt it, something was coming. And this time, it wasn't the Velatari. The signal had arrived not through frequencies or transmissions, but through intuition, a pressure in the bones, a tightness behind the eyes, a dream shared across minds. Walter had known what would happen if Eliath ever awakened. That was the deal. That was the price. When Earth called upon its final seed, someone else out there, something older, would hear it. And now it had. From the void between galaxies, a shape began to move. Not a fleet, not a planet, something in between. It didn't glow. It devoured light. It didn't announce itself. It simply was. A black omega. A living continent of sentience, a god not built but born, and left to drift alone until Earth's final scream reached it. The Velatari had feared it, written it out of their records, called it no father, the end that ends. It had heard Elias speak, and now it wanted to speak back. At the Earth Core Archives, an ancient, long-forgotten installation buried beneath what used to be the Himalayas, dust began to rise. A vault opened that hadn't opened in centuries. Inside, a coffin. Inside the coffin, a man, and on the side of that coffin, etched in fading code. Project, Kairos. If the operator fails, wake him. In Minnesota, the wind changed. The animals fled. The clouds turned inside out. The light began to dim, as if sunset was happening in reverse. Milo looked to Walter. So, what is this one? It isn't one, Walter replied. It's the original mistake, the one we buried, the one Earth was never supposed to contact again. What the hell did we do? Walter didn't answer, because the sky did. The stars blinked out, one by one. The No-Father was arriving. Eliath rose from the crust like a storm-given shape. It had no face, no body, just presence, pulsing in harmony with Earth's soul. But it hesitated, because even Eliath was afraid. The Twinks felt it in their bones, something ancient pressing in from all sides. Gravity stuttered. Time twitched. Rook whispered, "This isn't a fight we win." Milo, then what do we do? Walter turned slowly, eyes glazed with memories no one should bear. You don't fight a black hole, he said. You trick it. The Earth Core archive coffin opened, and the man inside, tall, ageless, eyes like broken clocks, stood. Kairos had been the first operator. Before Walter, before the Twinks, before even Eliath. He was the architect of time-altered warfare, the father of experimental probability weapons. And now he was awake. He blinked once. Then he whispered, "Pull me back." Eliath, in a burst of impossible energy, folded space. Kairos vanished from the Himalayas and appeared in Minnesota in a single blink. He looked around at the twinks, nodded at Walter, then pointed to the sky. "You all were the distraction," he said. "I'm the checkmate." Walter raised the last relic from the shack, a sphere carved from memory itself, the chrono core, handed to Kairos. It hummed, then glowed, and then detonated. But this was no ordinary explosion. This was temporal implosion. Every moment of Earth's resistance, every death, every scream, every act of defiance were compressed into a singularity of thought, then launched into the heart of the approaching nullfighter. The entity paused. For the first time in its unknowable existence, it felt. It saw a planet refuse to die. It saw children become weapons. It saw beauty in war. It saw rage turned into ballet. It faltered, and Kairos, standing at the edge of time, whispered, "Now!" Elias surged, not to attack, but to rewrite. It tethered to the nullfighter's mind, injecting the totality of Earth's will into the abyss. It rewrote the god's purpose. Not to consume, but to protect, to remember, to serve. The stars blinked back on. The nullfather bowed, then drifted away, not defeated, but converted. Silence fell again, not a scared one, a peaceful one. Walter Grimm sat on the porch of what was once a shack. A new sunrise crawled across the horizon. Birds returned to the trees. The wind stopped shivering. Rook sat beside him, barefoot and quiet. Milo played with a dog he'd rescued from the ashes. The Shiv sisters practiced knife flips in the yard, giggling like it was recess. Walter smiled. Not a smug smile. Not one of triumph. Just peace. "We never had power," he said softly. "You sure?" Rook asked. "Dead sure," Walter replied. "But we had style." They laughed. Somewhere beyond the stars, Velatari survivors whispered a new doctrine. Do not wake Earth. Do not test Earth. Do not speak of the operator who smiled. The twinks would fade again, sleep until needed, or not, maybe never again. Kairos returned to the archive. Elias slumbered beneath Patagonia. And Walter, he watched the wind, drank strong coffee, listened to silence like it was jazz. When asked what Earth had that the galaxy feared, he finally answered, memory, madness, and a few very pretty monsters.